everybody, hope you're having a great day. It's a gorgeous day outside and me and my co-host puppies are out here enjoying this wonderful weather. We're thrilled that it's starting to get a little bit cooler outside. I know a lot of people are getting ready for the 2021 Thru-Hike season, and so I thought I would make a video about the top 5 mistakes that I made when I did my Thru-Hike in 2018. I started in February and made it to Katahdin on July 13th, and it was an incredible journey. First time for me doing anything like that, and I made some mistakes along the way, so I thought if I can share some of my knowledge, maybe you can help some other people with your Thru-Hike and getting started at least. So this would be my top 5 mistakes that I made. First thing was, like every rookie mistake, I brought way too much gear when I started my Thru-Hike. I started February 18th of 2018, and I brought way more stuff than I needed. It was ridiculous. I brought so much clothes, so much gear. I didn't know any better. I brought stuff that was so heavy. It was just ridiculous. So I highly recommend that if you are new to hiking or doing long distance hiking, that you do a shakedown hike or a shakedown of your gear with somebody that is knowledgeable and knows what they're doing before you set on your trek. It would save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of weight. So if you don't have anybody that you can talk to about your gear and your gear list, there's tons of Facebook forums. If you make a gear list and put it on there and ask for advice, people are always very helpful and interested to help somebody else out, especially if you mention that you're new to it, that this is your gear list, and ask for any suggestions. I've seen some great suggestions and comments with people doing it that way. That's one way you can do it if you don't have somebody that you can go to in person. A lot of the outfitters will do a shakedown of your gear for you. Sometimes they charge, sometimes they don't. So that's a consideration too. I wish I had done that. I would have saved a ton of weight and not made so many mistakes. The second mistake I made was my cook system. I thought, I'll save some weight by not having one. A lot of people successfully do the trail without a problem with cold soaking, and that's not an issue. That if that's what they want to do and they're experienced doing it, then go for it. That's cool. For me, that was a mistake because I thought I could just cold soak everything and be fine. Well, that didn't work out because I started early. When you start in February, especially in 2018 when we had all of that cold weather and snow and snowstorms, it just never got warm. And when you have instant mashed potatoes that are soaking in cold water, it doesn't really work. They stay crunchy. So I wasn't eating enough, and my calories intake was so low in the beginning that it was just not very good or sustainable. So I couldn't wait until further up the trail when I could get to a town and get a proper cook system. So don't make that mistake. You can cut weight in your pack with a lot of different ways, but not having a cook system, I would say that should be for some of the diehard ultralight or hikers, or somebody that really knows what they're doing with that, especially in colder weather. I needed the warm food and the volume to keep my calories up, to keep my strength up, and so having a cook system was something that I needed. So once I got that, that was a game changer for me. Number 3 was gear. I bought cheap gear. I'm a frugal person anyway, and I thought, oh, I can just get by on having gear that's not that expensive and be just fine. Well, that doesn't work, especially on the Appalachian Trail. It's no joke out there. You're doing some serious hiking in some serious weather. Even if you don't start early in the freezing cold, it gets very cold in other places throughout the trail, along the trail, especially at night, especially with the wind. You need to have good quality gear that you've tested and used so that you're ready for it. Now, I thought I was, but turns out I wasn't. So I had bought a cheap trekking pole tent from, I forget where I got it from, but I paid less than $100 for it, and I thought, oh, this will be fine. And I tested it out multiple times, but every time I tested it out, now that I look back, it was in colder weather, but not freezing cold weather, nothing too windy, and nothing rainy. That's where I made my mistake. So when I got out onto the trail, we had tons and tons of rain, especially in the beginning. And if you have a cheap tent that is not very properly well ventilated, then the condensation gets everything inside the tent, including yourself, wet. And when your sleeping bag gets wet, it turns into just a huge weight. My sleeping bag got so heavy because it was just soaked, and it never would dry because it kept raining. And it didn't have the sun to dry out. So had I had a good tent, I wouldn't have had that problem. So buying cheap gear is not the way to go. So I bought the cheap tent, and I bought a cheap sleeping bag that was not, it was warm if it stays dry, but it didn't stay dry, and it was a lot heavier than it needed to be, so that wasn't cool. And I was just freezing to death out there and completely miserable in my cheap tent and my cheap sleeping bag. And then the third thing that I got that was cheap that really didn't work was my rain gear. So don't make the mistake I did and buy a rain jacket from Walmart and think that that's going to be okay. Now granted, I'm sure that's going to be okay for a lot of people if you know what you're looking for and how to use it. I did not, and the raincoat that I got was pretty much useless. So it didn't work at all. So that was an expensive mistake, to have to go into a town and change out my tent, my sleeping bag, and my rain gear, which took a good part of my budget that I had planned for the trail. Luckily, I had enough money to make it to the end, because after I did get a good tent that I was able to use, I was determined not to stay at too many hostels because I needed to get my money's worth out of that tent, which I did. It was a great tent, and it worked out well. I ended up getting a Big Agnes 2-person tent, and always from that point on stayed very dry. And a good sleeping bag and good rain gear. So that worked out. Number 4 is packing out too much food. I did this quite often. So especially in the beginning, you do have a lot of resources around you that you can use. You do not have to pack out food for 7 to 10 days at a time. That was just excessive and not necessary. I did not realize that I was doing that, but that it's a lot of weight. So, and then when I get to my resupply and still have days worth of food left, it was like there was no need to carry all of that stuff for all those days when I didn't need to. So try to plan out your stuff a little bit better. See your hiking ability, make a plan on how far you want to go, have a little extra in case you need it, but there's no need to have days worth of extra food unless you're going through the Smokies or the 100-mile wilderness, and you want to maybe have a day or two of extra food, just in case you get kind of held up in there for one reason or another. But otherwise, try to be a little bit smarter about how much food you pack out. because that was a big mistake I made, and it caused a lot of extra weight that I probably didn't need to be having. So, and then my fifth and final tip, the mistake I made, was sunscreen. I started early, but even on some of the balds with the trees, I mean, it's still a green tunnel and you still are pretty shaded for the most part, but there was a lot of points throughout the trail, not a ton, but there was a good bit of points here and there where I was exposed to the sun and definitely got sunburned. So if I had to do it again, which I will be doing the trail again in 2021 coming up, I'll have a little baggie with a little bit of sunscreen in it to carry on those days where I need to do that, because I did get pretty burned the day I summited Mount Washington, and that was pretty brutal. I got so sunburned, it was bad. So I wish I had had sunscreen. From that point on, I had carried sunscreen with me and it wasn't an issue, but had I known that earlier on, I could have saved a lot of sunburns. So you don't have to carry a lot of it. You can get a small tube of it, or you can get a little plastic baggie of it and just squirt some in there. But good to have on hand in case you need it. So those would be my top five mistakes. Please learn from mine and have a great thru hike. Thank you. Bye.